Hello there, and welcome back to the Love Machine podcast. Now, today I'm going to be talking about something quite serious, the matter of romance scams when it comes to online dating. Now, maybe you've heard about the lady who's been scammed for hundreds of thousands of pounds, or the man who was promised that he'd be dating a really hot model from Czechoslovakia, and in reality, all they really want is just your money. And while romance scams are very common, the good news is they're easy to spot. I don't want this to stop you doing online dating, because once you learn how to spot these scammers, they won't be a problem. And most of the good sites, of course, will remove these scammers before you even get a chance to meet them. With that in mind, I've got a really exciting and interesting guest for you today. I've got Sam Cooper, who is the owner of a really interesting company called Rogue Daters. Now, Rogue Daters are a team of private investigators who deal exclusively with romance scams. So Sam, welcome to my podcast.
Hi James, thank you for having me on today.
You're very welcome. Now Sam, please can you tell me a bit more about Rogue Daters and why you got into this?
Okay, so Rogue Daters was created to specialise in the dating industry. Having worked as a private investigator doing general investigations, I saw there was a need to specialise. The dating industry is booming, but unfortunately so are romance scams. And it leaves people out of pocket, heartbroken, and with the inability to be confident in their own choice making. And they start to doubt themselves. And it's just a horrible thing to happen to you.
It really is. These poor people are joining online dating sites to meet people. And because a lot of them are of a certain age, or they might be assumed that they have money, they become targets. And this is true of anywhere you're going to go. If someone's got money, they're always going to be a target. But online dating can make it easy for people to be targeted by these horrible scammers. So Sam, what exactly is a romance scam and how does it all work?
Okay, so a romance scam is where somebody is genuinely looking for love online, and the person at the other end that they're connecting with has ulterior motives. So it may be that they are looking to build up your trust in order to commit fraud against you, and they will kind of chat away to find out information about your personal life, to see where you are in life, who's in your life, and what you have in your life, all with the intention of taking something from you.
And by taking something, you mean money?
Most of the time it is money. It is money. You do get sometimes where it's somebody that just wants to be loved at the other end, and they're not truthful because they don't feel that they're worthy of that love. But 99% of the time it is aiming to take money.
So what you mean is there's probably two types of romance scam. There's the romance scam where somebody will target lonely singletons to extract money, and by pretending that they're deeply in love with them, and they convince them to fall in love back, and therefore they scam them out of money. And there's a second level of this, which is probably catfishing. And catfishing being the people who add fake photographs of themselves. It's very similar in some ways to the people that are trying to scam you. But catfish tends to be people who add fake photographs portraying an image that they are somebody else, maybe some hot model. And I agree, they both can work the same ways. And many people out there probably have encountered catfish, or they could perhaps do what's called kitten fishing, when they add a picture that's 10 years old. And in that case, it makes them look younger and therefore more desirable. So how do these scammers that are on these sites, these horrible, awful people, whereabouts are they based? How long do they work on this?
Right, it depends. They are based all over the world, and they sometimes work alone, sometimes they work in teams. It's organised crime a lot of the time. But I have a great saying, and that is, it doesn't matter who the scammer is, it matters who they are not. So we try to get people to do the proactive checks to ensure that they don't get scammed. We don't want to see people getting scammed and then coming to us. We want them to come to us in order not to get scammed.
But I imagine a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that they could be scammed in the first place. So what you're doing is probably raising awareness to let them know all the different ways these people are trying to con them. And people can be conned anywhere you go. You can be conned in a supermarket, conned in the high street. I don't want to put people off online dating, but it's something to be aware of. And the more awareness of this horrible situation of scammers, the better.
Absolutely. Online dating is fantastic and it does help a lot of people. However, it is a huge doorway for the scammers. So people, I hear people say a lot, it would never happen to me. And the people that have been scammed would have once said that as well. But it catches people when they're not expecting it. As I said earlier, when you're in the safety of your own home, you feel safe, you don't feel vulnerable, and you do open up. And unfortunately, the scammers, rely on that.
They do. It's all about making a deep emotional connection with you. And the more vulnerable you are, the more of a target you can become. Because they absolutely do play on that, don't they? They play on your weaknesses. And all the weaknesses are of somebody who wants to experience love.
Who doesn't want to experience love?
Everyone does. That's the biggest need in our lives, is to find love and to find a connection with somebody and to be supported on the journey of life. And these horrible people are out there and they're impersonating genuine singles. So working out how to spot them. You mentioned doing the right checks on them. What sort of checks do you recommend, and what deeper checks are you capable of doing as part of Rogue Daters?
Okay, so I think in today's age with the internet, you should certainly, before you do checks, you need to ask questions. So you need to know, where does somebody work? What's their family connections? And you can run simple Google checks on these. You can see if a company exists, with things like LinkedIn. Is this person listed under that company? So these are basic checks that everybody should do, and they shouldn't feel bad about doing it. It's just being sensible. When it goes deeper than that, at Rogue Daters, we have the ability to look at different software, and we've got the mindset to profile and to see if everything adds up.
I think an important part of working out if someone's a catfish or a fake profile is little simple things like Google image search. If you go into Chrome, you can right click the image and see if the internet has the picture anywhere else. Because often these scammers are using fake photographs. That's not always true, but the ones that use the fake ones, they will use them, maybe military photographs or ones they've got off model agencies in America or foreign countries, so they can't be traced. But if you right click it and you Google image search it, then you will see if it appears, and therefore it might appear as a stock photo, one that's used thousands of times, and you know that person is not real. I also know that lots of scam agencies in East European countries have dedicated model agencies, and they take photo shoots of hot young girls who are paid money, and their pictures are used endlessly to scam men. It's not just women and people over the age of 50 that are being scammed, it's everyone who's being targeted. I unfortunately had a client recently who has been scammed twice by these hot blonde models out there who asking for money. They say, look, I need a bit of money before I can do this. We'll come on to this because you all know more about this. And they'll ask for money. He's fallen for it twice. In fact, at one point, he couldn't afford to have any more sessions with me because he spent all his money for that month to another scammer. And he knows that they're scammers, but he's just lonely. And he enjoyed the conversation. He enjoyed the attention. So what advice would you give someone like that?
I think, by coming to Rogue Daters, they would get a professional opinion. And, unfortunately, a lot of it is because people are lonely. And we do often suggest that other ways that they can connect with people, not necessarily on a romantic level, to fill that void. But you're 100% right. It is, people are being scammed. They are men, women, younger and older. And also just coming back to the picture search, I think running a picture search isn't necessarily enough, because sometimes I know some of the social media companies have clamped down on what Google searches can be carried out on photographs on people's profiles. So I think if you do a search and the picture doesn't come up elsewhere, you need to do a bit more than that as well, because you wouldn't necessarily that wouldn't make it everything okay. But yeah, I think people sometimes need an unemotional professional opinion. And sometimes they may get that from a friend or family, but then they tend to be like, well, they just don't want me to fall in love again, or to have an online romance. But also, I think people need to ask themselves, where is this romance going? So if you've met somebody who lives thousands of miles away abroad, what is the potential of that romance? And I think people really need to think about that and question it.
I do agree. People can be convinced of any story, providing it fits what they want. So they could be hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away, and they're sending them this love story. And they start to believe that they're going to actually move and they're going to go and live with them, or this person will come to them. And deep down, they know it's not going to happen, but they get caught up with this love story because that's what they do. They reel them in, they feel this connection they've never had with somebody before. Because these scammers are highly trained and highly skilled at doing this. They can get your every little idiosyncrasy, every little habit, every little value, whatever it might be, and they can find it and they will twist it and they will use it against you in order to make you fall in love. And falling in love is such a lovely process and you really enjoy it and you get all the lovely chemicals flood your mind. It can confuse people. But there's also a misconception, I think, that people who get taken in by these scammers are stupid or they are gullible. And it's not the case, is it?
It's really not the case. I've had some, high functioning professionals come to me that have been scammed. And it's because these scammers, as you say, are professionals and they build up that trust. And then all of a sudden, when they're asking for money, they make you feel guilty for not giving it. And and they create a horror story that you think that you then become responsible for, that if you're not going to pay the money, you're enabling that horrible thing to happen. And unfortunately, that's why people end up paying and sending money.
They do. They often start out with a small request, don't they? They will say, I need money for my internet connection or my phone bill. And when they've paid that small amount of money, they're more likely, therefore, to pay a larger amount.
That's right. And I say to clients, I say, if you can't pay your phone bill this month, you don't know me that well. Would you come to me for money? And they always say, well, of course not. If I was really in trouble, I would go to a family member. And I kind of say to them, the scammer, the person that you're connecting with, should be doing the same. They should not be coming to you. And they'll always say, like, yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. You're right.
It's all just testing people, testing them. How much are they going to give? How quickly can they pay someone the money? How quickly can they convince them? Because the way these scammers work, the person that they're talking to isn't always just one person. Quite often it's a team of people, and the initial person, maybe say there's 5 people, the initial person will go on there, and their job is to hook everybody in. They will send the same message to everybody, and if someone writes back, the next person takes over, and they have to engage with them. They have to get the love story going. They're the talented, creative ones. And then after that, other people come along, and they will try and convince you to send money. So there are teams of people out there who are taking in turns to talk to you. So your messages might not always be as consistent as you would imagine them to be.
Correct. They are. And a lot of the time it's from a script that they're writing from. And, and even some of the detail, you need to look at what is being said to you, because, a quick question to ask somebody is, where are you in the world and what's the time there? And a lot of the time they won't know. But I've also noticed that clients have said to me, I had a couple of things that didn't add up, and if you've got that niggle, you need to explore it and not turn a blind eye to it, because, you've been caught up in the excitement of, well, it's a fake love.
It is, but sometimes it's really hard to let go of that. They want to give them the benefit of the doubt so badly. They will overlook these silly little things that they think, maybe it's a niggle, maybe it's not, but I want to give them a chance. I couldn't possibly challenge them over it, because then they might run away and they might leave me. And it's the fear of them leaving them that keeps them hooked in.
Correct. And I've had it where I've been able to show a client that this person doesn't exist, and they've used pictures from said other person, and they still have that belief that this person really does exist and really does love them. And it's heartbreaking to see. But I would rather stop it and show somebody in order that they can see that they're being scammed and move on and find true love.
I agree. I've had clients the same situation. I've Googled the words that they've used them in emails, and I've shown them that these scripts exist, and other people have put them online, and they still think, well, maybe they've got inspiration from it. Maybe they try and talk themselves into it rather than out of the situation. I have to be quite firm sometimes. Most people can see it when you present all the evidence, which of course is what you're doing, isn't it? You're giving them a whole report based on all the reasons why these people aren't real. But it's
Yeah.
so hard to let go once you become emotionally involved. I remember a long, long time ago, I was talking to someone on the internet, probably 20 years ago now, and it was an actress who supposedly was in a top film that was on at the time in the cinemas, and I was talking to her, and then I felt something wasn't quite right. And then the next day, the next day, her sister took over the profile, saying that her sister had died in a car crash. And I've seen this same situation happen now on TV shows like Catfish. They always seem to die in a car crash, or they've died of cancer, or something really, really weird.
Yeah.
This is probably more going towards Catfish, though, isn't it?
Yes. Although I've seen many stories where somebody in the military has been shot, or has to have an emergency operation, or they've got a child, or it may be a doctor that's looking after a sick child, and they're all horrible, horrible stories. And I suppose that's why people pay up, because they think they don't want to be responsible for, say, somebody not receiving life-saving surgery. It's very cruel.
They can't take that risk, can they? Like you said, it's guilt.
It's guilt. And they honestly believe that they're so invested because they believe they're in a genuine relationship. And that's the worst part of what I do, is telling people that the relationship and the person is not genuine. However, as much as it upsets the client, it's worth it, because I would rather that they know the truth and know that there is a body out there like Rogue Daters who are willing to help them and help stop this happening. And I think the dating companies really need to up their game as well and stop, extra verifications to stop these scammers getting through.
I've always said that myself. A lot of these big ones, the paid for companies, they do vet profiles quite well. And often you'll see profiles that have the pictures been removed and the profile's been removed. And you get a note on there saying, I think Matt say that there's good eggs and there's bad eggs, and this one was a bad one, it's been taken away. It doesn't stop the fact that you've interacted with them. And they're still allowing them to get past the checks in the first place. If you're using a free site, even a dating app, quite often the no payment is involved, and therefore the credit card checks aren't necessary. And of course, they can use stolen credit cards anyway, can't they?
Yeah.
But the more you use a paid for site, the more likely it is to have a good team. But I feel if they did more checks, it would be really, really useful. But on the other hand, I can see why they don't. If people had to send their passports over, or they had to verify their age and their heights and all their incomes, then they probably wouldn't want to join the site in the first place. It's too much information. I know a lot of top matchmakers will always do those checks, and they'll check on all these different things, and they vet people individually. But it's a lot of time and a lot of work for sort of small companies to do this. So how do you think that online dating sites should do it without spending too much time?
I think I think it's a verification process. So I've seen some dating sites, you have to upload a photograph of yourself and then a video. And yes, okay, these can be doctored as well, but they're less likely. It's a much harder process to join the dating site. The free ones, yeah, that anyone can join, anyone can make an email address. So I do think they need better verification, and to pay, possibly join organizations like myself to run checks for them.
I saw a website a couple of months ago that really, really shocked me. And what it was, you've probably heard about this. I'm not going to reveal what the website is in case any scammers are listening today. I'm sure they're not. They've got better things to do. And this website is, it will allow you to generate a completely fake picture. And a photograph appears on the screen by clicking a button, and it generates a completely fake person that is made up of millions of other people all put together. and you cannot tell the difference. I think they're called deep fakes. Have you heard much about that?
I have, and actually, we've tried between a team of us to create some of these photographs, not using that website, to see if we can create a profile. And obviously, we did. And obviously, we took it straight down because it was just to see whether we could create somebody that didn't exist and create a persona for this person. And it did work. And
Yeah.
it's frightening.
It really is terrifying because you can just create a fake picture and pretend to be somebody else. So you can catfish people as much as you want. And as the internet progresses, it's up to the sites to make further checks into this and do the best that they can.
I also think that the person who is dating should really set their parameters so they're dating people quite local to themselves. So obviously not during lockdown, but after that, where they can actually physically meet up, obviously in a safe place, to build a proper relationship. I don't believe people go online dating to build an online relationship, because if you're really looking for love, you want something real and offline. So I think people should look at either dating sites that work more local to their area, or where you can set a 5 mile radius if you're really looking for love.
It used to be 10, 15 years ago, before dating apps were so common, that you would probably go off the site and you start writing emails to each other. And then when you've got that, there's other information that can be found out. But that isn't what happens nowadays. People tend to go from dating apps or dating sites very quickly onto maybe WhatsApp, and then they meet people.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do get stuck in the in between ground between being on the site and actually meeting face to face. They become pen pals with people, not necessarily because they're scammers, but maybe they're just time wasters, or they've got no intention of ever meeting people. So I agree with you. Get out on a date with them and meet them as soon as you can. And at least you're going to know if you really do like them or not. I know that during lockdown in particular, people have been forced to make more meaningful, longer connections, which is fantastic. But now, as things do ease up a little bit, people will be able to meet up and they'll be out there making quicker judgments and having dates back as normal again. Now, supposing that someone has been scammed, maybe they've paid several thousands of pounds to a scammer and they're starting to come around to the idea, hang on, this person isn't really, really true. Now, these people can't really go to the police, can they? Because the police don't take it too seriously.
We all know that the police are overworked and underfunded. So, and obviously they can report it to Action Fraud. However, once you've sent a report to Action Fraud, there's not a lot that happens. You do hear of the odd case where they have had so many reports that they do investigate it. But we would certainly look at it. We are very clear how we deal with people's expectations and what they expect back. We don't promise we can get people their money back, and we will certainly look at a way that, if it's possible, that we would. But we certainly do look at showing people if this person is real and what they have told you is genuine.
I understand that the police can't get the money back either in most cases. So you're not going to get the money back if the police can't really do it. So you're right, people should not expect to get the money back. If the money's been paid to somebody in Nigeria or another country, then the chances of getting it back is very, very hard. There's different laws out there, and so you haven't got the money, but you have got the chance to be free of this person and to live your life again. And it's such a wonderful thing that there are companies like Rogue Daters out there who can help people and maybe give them some more hope that there are other people who can sympathise with them, because they might feel really stupid. A lot of people that get scammed don't like to tell anyone else what's happened. They're embarrassed by it, aren't they?
That's right. And at Rogue Daters, we have heard every story. We're non-judgmental, and everything is confidential when you come to us, and we're here to help. We're on your side.
What sort of sums of money have you heard people have lost from these scams?
Last week alone, I had 2 clients combined lost £53,000.
Wow.
And they hadn't reported it to the dating site. They hadn't reported it to the police. And obviously, once the investigations were complete, they had a report to which they could go to the police with. And I know that the banks now are making changes to make it a bit tighter for the scammers for people to make payments. So now you have to, if you're sending somebody money, you have to put in the name of the person of the account, which is much better, but the scammers will find a way to get around that. So I think people, if in doubt, need professional advice.
They do. They're not really sure what to do. They're just embarrassed by the whole situation. And they think, well, I'm not going to tell the dating site because it means I have to admit that I've fallen for the whole thing. It's just embarrassing. But I think it is so important that even if you have an interaction with a scammer, or even a time waster, or anyone that treats you in any way disrespectfully, you have a duty to report them to the dating site and let them know. Now, first of all, if you've got a suspicion that this person isn't real, the dating site can suspend that profile, they can do some checks, and they can come back to you. And they will read other messages and they will see what the profile is like, check their credit card details out. And if they're not real, they will get rid of them. And not just that, but you are saving somebody else from being scammed. If you keep quiet about this and you pay money and you get scammed, or you have a bad experience on a date, just tell the dating site, let them know, and they can flag it up for future people. Because you could be saving someone all sorts of trauma and financial nightmares.
Definitely. I find that if people go to a restaurant and have a bad meal, they're very happy to be vocal about it and write bad reviews. This is even more important to do so on a dating website. You are saving possibly yourself and other people from real heartbreak. And, we've heard some horror stories where people have, taken their own lives because they've been scammed and they just can't live with it and they've lost their life savings. It's just horrendous.
It really is. It's something. It's the dark side of the whole internet in general. I would say that people are being scammed, not just on dating sites, but by everyone gets junk mail and scam mail sent to you every day. Like you've won millions of pounds in some financial lottery that exists, or maybe you've got some rich uncle who's just died in Dubai. Be
Yeah,
sensible and just realize that these people are out there to get you. But lots of people are genuine, and people are looking for a real, deep, and meaningful connection. Now, what do you think might be next in terms of dating in general and scammers? If people become more aware of what's going to happen, how do you think that scammers will become cleverer?
well, I'd like to think that we'll keep blocking them from becoming cleverer. But obviously, as technology develops, so are their techniques. I mean, I have clients who come to me and say, but they've sent me a video of themselves talking. And we've all seen it before where these videos have been taken and doctored and, and photographs, they can be edited. So I just think the scammers need to be kept on their toes and, we need to keep trying to stop them.
Absolutely. It's up to individuals to report profiles and the websites to try harder than ever. If they're taking people's money in particular, they've got a duty to protect them and protect their members. I'd like to give our listeners 6 top tips for spotting a scammer. I'd like to give my top tips at the end of every podcast. And here are my very, very 6 top tips. I'm going to give them, and then hopefully, Sam, you can give me your feedback and any extra advice on them. So my first bit of advice for you is if they're too good to be true, they might well be. If someone is a hot 18-year-old model and you're an old man in your 60s or 70s and they're paying attention to you, you've got to ask yourself, what are they playing at? If they're too good to be true, it's probably just a fantasy. Not always, but 9 times out of 10, that's the case. Look out for common phrases that scammers use in their profiles. A lot of these scammers tend to be God-fearing, or they will say how honest they are. They always say they're honest, and also the most dishonest people that there are. Or they often are widowed. No, not all widows are going to be scammers, of course, but if there's a pattern of behaviour or a pattern of language, then look out for them. And of course, we discussed already, if they ask for money in any way, too early or at any point really, just get rid of them, cut them off, block them and report them. Because no one that doesn't know you is going to ask for money. Why would they? Then, of course, it's your job to ask them to meet as soon as you can and speak to them on the phone. Speaking on the telephone, at least you're going to know if they've got an English accent or American accent, whatever you're expecting. And if they ask you to come off the site and go on to email, why? What is the point of that? It's because they can use their scripts and they can use these long, wonderful love letters that they've composed already. If you're on the website or you're on the site or you're on an app, then you can be anonymous and you're protected by that. The second you give out your number or your email address, then you are exposed. But a phone number is a lot safer because at least you can talk to them and interact with them, even video call them if you want to. And finally, if you're not sure about what's going on or you've got doubts in any way, then ask a friend to take a little look at it. They will spot things in your profile that they will spot things in their profile that you've overlooked. They can see all the red flags that maybe you've not seen, and they will be a lot more truthful and more honest with you. There's my top tips. What are your thoughts on those ones then, Sam?
They all sound fantastic. The one that I would add is to ask questions about family members and just their life structure. Write down the answers and re-ask them again a few days later and see if they come back with the same answers.
That's very clever. That's a great bonus tip there. And I think you're right. You should also ask them, if they say that they live in London, and you can ask them what they can see out their window or what they've done recently or anything that's wherever they might be. Ask them a question about it, because a scammer who's based out of another country is not going to have a clue if there's a McDonald's in that road or if there's something going on or a famous work of art somewhere. So absolutely, that's really, really good advice. Thank you, Sam. So with that in mind, now this is a little bit sad, but if any of our listeners do need to find you, and hopefully they won't be scammed now, but if they do get scammed or they've got any doubts, maybe they've got a suspicion that their friends or family members are being scammed, how can they find you?
They can find our website at www.roguedaters.co.uk, or we can be contacted by phone on 0208 150 6869. Okay, so we don't run checks on just anybody. We do need a legitimate interest in order to run the investigation. So call us, have a chat, and we'll discuss the situation and see if there is a case there to be investigated.
That's fantastic. It's a very, very good point. You're not going to just investigate everyone for the sake of it, because you don't know what the other side of the story is, do you? You have to look into it and work out that they are, or maybe they're not, a scammer. Sam, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I've learned so much, and hopefully our listeners have done too. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Thanks, James.
Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to give you a free copy of my latest book, which you can download right now from my website, jamespreece.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could share the love by taking a few seconds to write a positive review on the iTunes store right now. See you next time.